He's known for thinking out of the box. I mean, a lot of people, it's hard to find a doctor that looks for other ways to treat things other than something that was developed from petroleum, as Carnegie or Rockefeller decided that it had to be many, many, many moons ago. And so he's one of the out-of-the-box doctors. When he starts playing his didgeridoo, I'm sure you'll figure he's out-of-the-box doctor. And so let's listen to him tonight and give him your attention. Thank you so much for coming.
And since he mentioned the didgeridoo, how many of you play the didgeridoo? Well, it's easy to play. You just sort of go, and you put a thing like this up to your mouth, and it makes it sound like this.
Not out of breath yet.
That tones the vagus nerve. I guess you're ready to give presentation. So you have a handout with the title, Turn Your Attention to Vagus, the nerve, not the place. And then there's a subtitle, Basic Polyvagal Theory, a Post-Pandemic Pathway to Resilience. There's 4 P's in there. Is that alliteration or onomatopoeia? I can never remember. Anybody an English teacher? No English teachers. Anyway, disclaimer, tonight I'm not practicing medicine here, even though I do practice medicine. I'm A. Patrick Jonas, MD, board certified family doctor in neighborly family medicine in Beavercreek. And then the free clinic is in Bellbrook, Open Arms Health Clinic. And we treat people who are like between lives or between doctors or between whatever's insurances, jobs, spouses, prisons, what have you. And we try to help them to be themselves. We have a lot of medical students there kind of learning about how to be a doctor, how you can actually listen to the patient's story. It's one of the things we emphasize is patient story. Anyway, we have fun, and as far as the honorarium for tonight goes to the free clinic to help them to help people to have more fun. So the whole polyvagal thing and the vagus nerve, I think I stumbled into that when I stumbled into a milk can that was about 3 feet tall, sitting behind my lean-back chair in my kitchen when I was typing up a note from a video visit about the coronavirus about 11:30 one night. And I leaned back and fell asleep and went on down and hit the milk can on the back of my head there. Suddenly woke up. Yeah. Then I saw a look on my wife's face that I never want to see again. It was the, oh my God, he's dead look. And that scared me more than the fall. Anyway, messed up my neck a little bit, my swallowing and some other things, and had to figure it out some, along with about 4 physicians who were doing some parts work later. And darned if this vagus nerve didn't jump up, and polyvagal theory, and then a whole bunch of books about polyvagal. So in your handout, you have the title of all these books here. The Pocket Guide to the Polyvagal Theory by Steve Porges, who sort of started the whole thing. The Transformative Power of Feeling Safe. So we'll talk a lot about that tonight, feeling safe and not feeling danger, and showing safety in your face. In fact, one way to show more safety in your face is the basic exercise from Stanley Rosenberg in his book, Accessing the Healing Power of the Vagus Nerve, has a couple simple exercises, the first one of which you might be able to do depending on how far your elbows reach out. So essentially, first you kind of turn your head all the way one way, and then all the way the other way, and notice how far it goes. Does it go far enough? Or you hypermobile people might go all the way around. But if you're not one of those, actually as they age, they get a lot of neck arthritis. So that's step one, see how far your neck goes. Step two is to, let's see, we'll take the glasses off so I don't mess them up. So you put your fingers together, hands behind the head, and watch out for the person beside you. Then with your eyes only, look all the way to the right for 30 seconds. And somebody out there who counts real well, you can do the 30 seconds, that's about 10. So keep looking to the far right. Somewhere in there you'll notice that you like swallow or sigh or something. And that's kind of a little vagus nerve reset. About 25. 30, and then look straight ahead and look all the way to the left for 30 seconds. I noticed there's a second hand on the clock back there. Sorry about that. And if you can't look at the left at all, President Biden will help you with that.
Yeah.
25, 26. That's just right. Okay, now see how far your head goes to the right and to the left. Now what do you notice there? You got blurred vision? See, there's negative potential effects to everything, aren't there? But anyway, the basic exercise, that's a vagal toning exercise. And the vagus nerve interacts with 4 other, 5, 7, 9, 10, 11, 4 other cranial nerves to make each other happy. So to make the vagus nerve happy, it'll make the 11th cranial nerve happy, and the other 3, and the 11th runs your sternocleidomastoid muscles, your head turner muscles. So they get more relaxed, and also the trapezius muscle, the big kite-shaped muscle from the scalp out to the shoulders and down that make your body go like this and like that. So both those muscles get relaxed, as do the facial muscles, because facial nerve and a couple others get relaxed with that little friendly wave at the vagus nerve. So your face then looks more welcoming and safe to other humans. Not that they think about it, but their autonomic nervous system automatically checks the information coming in the eyeballs and clarifies, is that a safe face or not? Is that dangerous or not? Can we connect with them or not? And the key area is between here and here. So many of you may have accidentally hidden that space for the last couple of years. So a lot of people who were looking at masked folks couldn't tell if that was a safe person or a dangerous person. And your autonomic nervous system then says, we don't know that safety is here, so the sympathetic part of the autonomic nervous system gets mobilized to cause some kind of action, whether the action is to punch them in the face, or to run, or to have a seizure. Your body is sort of pre-programmed, but that's part of the beauty of the autonomic nervous system, that it can work together without your conscious input to make decisions for you and kind of drag your body through life, and then you invent stories to rationalize what just happened. That's not totally true. Doesn't say that in the Bible, but it's partly true. So that's the sort of introduction to aspects of the vagus nerve, autonomic nervous system, safety, the transformative power. Is that what he said on this cover page? The transformative power of feeling safe. And so Stephen Porges was a researcher who wanted to be a psychologist, but he wanted to be a technological-oriented psychologist. He wanted to put wires on people's heads or in their ears or their tongues or something, because he didn't want to just talk to people, apparently. And he first started with research on heart rate variability in newborns. So as you remember, when you're 32 weeks of age, your vagus nerve gets myelinated and covered and fully functional, but until then, it doesn't have the myelin covering and it doesn't function perfectly, so there may be arrhythmias in preemies. So he studied those a whole bunch and found heart rate variability, which is a measure of one aspect of the autonomic nervous system. We have some objectives for tonight as we go through things about the autonomic nervous system, the vagus nerve, and so forth. By the way, the vagus nerve, as you can see on the third line there, is spelled V-A-G-U-S, not like the city. And I think the vagus nerve was around before the city was, so they could have actually named it for the vagus nerve. It'd be a really cool place to go and relax. So objectives, there are three components of the autonomic nervous system. There's three ways to shape the autonomic nervous system. Control, rears its ugly head. Discuss ways to tone your vagus nerve. You've just done one. Discuss, and I did one with the didgeridoo, that was sort of cheating. This is it's a biological frequency, so it entrains to your spinal cord and asks your body if it can sort of bring things together or not. Discuss the benefits of the social engagement system, and that essentially is what we're talking about with the face, and I'll wave a picture of that around here shortly. Discuss some actions of the sympathetic nervous system. How can you make your autonomic nervous system resilient? Should have put a question mark there. Basic polyvagal theory. So we did the accessing the healing power of the vagus nerve. So I was looking at vagus nerve toning videos on the internet and found Suki Baxter. And Suki Baxter had the basic exercise in her first video, although she had people out on the floor, which we didn't do because sometimes it's hard to get up off the floor. And we didn't want that. So she said, I didn't invent this. It came from this book here, of this guy. And I hit a couple buttons and it was flying through, anyway, cyberspace, the order. And a very interesting guy, Stanley Rosenberg, is like a massage therapist, body worker, rolfer, energy practitioner, etc. in Denmark. And he stumbled into Porges at a meeting and realized he could take the polyvagal stuff and put it into what he was doing and help a lot of people. So he has every one of his clients before a massage or whatever session do that basic exercise. He does it also, so they at least have the sense that they're tolerable and they're safe, and then he does the same thing at the end of the session. Definitions. So in Porges' book here, he sort of goes at defining the polyvagal theory. Basically it means that there's more pieces of the vagus nerve than one, but it works together in the autonomic nervous system, and it's outlined here in pink underlining. Polyvagal theory emphasizes that an organizing principle to identify neural circuits that promote social behavior and two classes of defensive strategies: mobilization associated with fighting or fleeing, and immobilization associated with hiding or feigning death. So there you go. It's your fight or flight, or your hide or die. And he also said, he's into evolution, but an unproven little piece of some aspect of his theory. But the social behavior is defined by a face-heart connection, in which the neural regulation of the striated muscles of our face and head are neurophysiologically linked to the neural regulation of our heart. So basically the heart and head are connected, and see this, a little picture in this flip chart that I didn't take a picture of. Those nerves coming out of the brainstem go up to the face and they go down to the heart, and they sort of integrate us into what's called the social engagement system that can be played with toning the vagus nerve. It also kind of implies that we can't hide. So, and that we're not alone. can't hide and you're not
There's a
alone.
trigeminal hook to the heart.
Trigeminal isn't. So the vagus nerve is, but there's the vagus nerve is kind of influencing all those other ones. And the other ones then say, we're okay, or not okay. And one thing that can get in the way of all that are spike proteins that we talked about last year. So I talked about the virus variants and the vaccines last year. So one thing has been found to flush out spike proteins is resveratrol, which is in grapes and red wine. And another wonder chemical that had 3 of the 8 effects of ivermectin against the coronavirus is black cumin seed oil, or black cumin seed, or black cumin, or Nigella sativa. So a lot of people have found that they could do something like this and not have to see doctors for ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. But the protocols that we talked about last year at www.flccc.net now include this type of product as something that's effective. It's also approved for parasites and worms in multiple countries. It sounds familiar. So just a little flashback to the coronavirus. So we got the power of feeling safe. So then Porges was the researcher who did a lot of research. He first did research in babies and discovered heart rate variability. And then he found the autism community and did research with autistic people and found that they have a lot of hyperacusis, or excessive hearing, and people talking at a normal tone can sound too loud to them and they might want to beat their head against the wall or something because it's traumatizing. So he invented a noisemaker for ears that was a certain frequency that relaxed the stapedius muscle, the smallest muscle in the body, to make the hearing different, and then found that the autistic, a whole bunch of the autistic folks then could engage their social engagement system and connect to other people and see that people were safe and communicate more effectively. And they have a protocol called Safe and Sound that if you're a therapist with those kind of folks, you can buy on the internet. But it's fascinating that they'll find these little discoveries in medical science or psychological, whatever science, neuroscience, and they just don't really spread very fast. We don't become massively suddenly aware, like, oh my gosh, this guy had this study, he did this thing, and why are we all doing that? We're slow learners. So somebody who picked up on what he had written was Deb Dana. She never calls herself Deborah, so it's Deb Dana. So she's a therapist, so she wrote a series of books, starting with this one, The Polyvagal Theory and Therapy. And it turned out Porges then found, after the autism community, he found the traumatized people, the battered, beaten, abused, raped, etc. He found the foster children especially, and noted that 80% of the people on death row are fostered. So he thought somebody could sort of go backwards a bit and do some work with the autonomic nervous system, polyvagal theory, etc., the social engagement system, and maybe help some folks to connect better in certain ways. So Deb Dana, the therapist, decided to teach therapists how to use the polyvagal theory in their therapy, and came up with a whole bunch of exercises. When you look at the components of the autonomic nervous system, let's look at we got some pictures here. Sympathetic is mobilizing, and we classically talk about fight or flight, and that's the spinal nerves, like the whole spinal cord. See, that's the whole autonomic nervous system right there. The red is sympathetic, and green or blue, that other color, is parasympathetic, which is mostly vagus nerve. And you can see that every organ in your body is sort of over there on the far right. We got like a magnifier here, the upper part, from the eye, and anyway, all kinds of interesting things about taste, smell, swallow, eustachian tubes, and so forth, related to the vagus nerve. And anyway, all the inferior. So we got the sympathetic nervous system goes from that part of the spine. See all those things coming out of the spine. So the vagus nerve comes out of the brain stem, except for a piece down. There's some sacral nerves as part of the parasympathetic. That's not the vagus nerve. That may be confusing. Emphasizing this, dilating the pupils, inhibiting salivation, increasing heartbeat, relaxing the airways, inhibiting the activity of the stomach. So you can, when you're about to be assaulted or in a car wreck or run over by a train, the sympathetic part of the autonomic nervous system mobilizes and can dilate your pupils, inhibit your salivation, so you get a dry mouth, tachycardia. You can take deeper breaths. You don't have to have, you're not digesting very much at that time. And it will secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine. So you can get like a panic attack or run really fast or so forth. The vagus nerve is a little more complex than a lot of the above. So we got, let's see, more emphasis here. And does this thing show up if I, no, it doesn't show up. Anyway,
Yeah,
so
it's showing up.
oh, it is? Okay, let me look over. It's like being the weather person. So vagus nerve is red dotted line. Let's go back one. You see it right in the middle? Right through here. The red dotted line keeps going. Then it kind of splits out here and does a whole bunch of things. That's your eustachian tube. So it can have something to do with eustachian tube dysfunction. You feel fullness in the ear or something. It may not be an ear infection or allergy to Ohio. It might be something with the vagus nerve. And so it goes down here too, like carotid bodies. And it does something in the aorta, so it's sensing pressures. And 80% of the function of the vagus nerve is getting information from these body parts that it connects to, and 20% is sending information back as to what to do. But that, so this territory here is kind of interesting. As people, if you go into a nursing home at lunchtime, you hear a lot of people choking and coughing when they're eating. So they're kind of having micro aspiration. It can be a vagus nerve malfunction, as well as all kinds of things about throats and swallowing that relate to the vagus nerve. And the what's called in our literature for the polyvagal theory, the ventral vagal. So ventral vagal is sort of that face-heart combo, and dorsal vagal is like your gut. Have a gut feeling, and it's like a negative thing. So dorsal vagal also could include like shutdown. Let's go to, so Deb Dana's literature, she talks about the autonomic hierarchy as one of the key parts of the polyvagal theory. So ventral vagal is what I call the mommy heart. It's safety, connection, your heart rate variability is increased, your sympathetic, parasympathetic are in balance. Just a lot of good things, and like when you hear the didgeridoo, you go ventral vagal and you just love it. It's not mandatory. The sympathetic is mobilizing, so it mobilizes people to do ventral vagal things like happy, connect, etc. Or can mobilize and make people get the fight or flight and go what's called dorsal vagal. It could be like a shutdown, a disconnect, an escape, a runaway, a dissociation even in the psychiatric world. And so that she calls the hierarchy, with dorsal vagal being the lowest thing on the food chain, and implying that one wants to be more ventral vagal. But as we know in life, we can have feelings of guilt frequently and go dorsal vagal pretty easily and have more trouble getting ventral vagal. So a concept that explains how this is happening without our active input is neuroception, and that's the input from the world that goes through the eyeballs to the autonomic nervous system, which makes a decision based on records that are already in there to do something. So your impulse control disorder people have sympathetic overdrive, and it kicks in a dorsal vagal, anyway, they don't hug people. They might punch somebody. So that's the concept of neuroception. And the other concept that they bring out a lot is co-regulation. So Porges found when he was studying the babies that what they resonated best to, what made their best heart rate variability, was their mommy singing them lullabies. So something with their mother. So mother's voice was a little more high-pitched, and he talks about a attribute of voices called prosody, which is kind of elevated tones and pitches and so forth. Rockabye baby in the treetop goes up and down, up and down. So the co-regulation, so initially we are co-regulated with our parents, the mother more than the father, and then we're supposed to be independent, so we self-regulate. And we may or may not do well at that, so we might have to move back in mom and dad's when we're 32 after the second divorce and get some more co-regulation. But connecting with friendly autonomic nervous systems, or known autonomic nervous systems, not necessarily friendly, but known and understood. So those are some of the key aspects of the polyvagal theory, the autonomic hierarchy, and just the social engagement system, a little more about the pieces, facial expression, emotional expression, eyelids or social gaze, the middle ear, here's the human voice, mastication, ingestion, and sucking. So sucking initially is a real positive thing, and vocalizing, swallowing, breathing, and the larynx and the pharynx, and head turning and tilting. So people sort of notice head turn and tilt as a particular message. So generally people don't have their head straight up, except I was in the military about 9 years, and there were a lot of people standing straight, but otherwise humans kind of tilt their head a bit to hear. And you used to, what those things might mean with your particular closest relatives, you see them and you know they're tilting the head in the positive way when they're in the ventral vagal state, and it's okay, or they're tilting it differently and they have a look on their face that says something else. Navigating the autonomic nervous system. So Dana, in her, let's see, in this book, bless you, polyvagal exercises for safety and connection. There's 50 different exercises, and they're not like jumping jacks or things like that. They're things about breathing and music and so forth. Essentially, BASIC stands for befriend, attend, shape, integrate, and connect. And that's in your handout on page 2. Befriending, so you're supposed to become a friend with your autonomic nervous system and not feel threatened by it. You can be surprised by it and say, that's so not me. But it is me. Maybe I can change that part of me. I don't have to be trapped by that, do I? So befriending, attending, paying attention to it, shaping it by things we'll talk about tonight, integrating it into your life, and then using it for better connection. Befriending. So trying to recognize the autonomic state. So does everybody remember a time when you were fine and connecting to somebody and suddenly they said something or whatever and you just shut down? It was your last employer or spouse or whatever. Or it could even be like your dog. Because your dog is always loyal and friendly, and you're saying something to the dog suddenly growls, and you say, uh-oh. And then you start to go like this, and get your face looking friendly. So how about sympathetic mobilization? Have you noticed a time when you kind of got mobilized for action, and you went one way or another? And you can't really necessarily fully predict what you're going to do, because you have agency, you have freedom, and independence. At least we used to, and we're trying to keep that. So you can notice the mobilization, but like if you're mobilized for, say, Thanksgiving, your family has like a touch football game, after hunting on Thanksgiving morning, while the people who cook are cooking things, the other people are knocking people down. So there might be a mobilization for that in a positive way, in a happy way, as long as they haven't started drinking yet. That's when the police come and break up the Thanksgiving. Recognize the autonomic state. So, do you have any question about what's a dorsal vagal state? It's a survival instinct state, but it can be a good survival state. So survival is not all negative. The ventral vagal, we did the exercise to tone the vagus nerve, and we had the face thing and so forth, so you get a sense of that. Has everybody had ventral vagal moments where you felt safe, positive, connected to other people? You may or may not have noticed that your face felt or looked better. But if you have the taloderm, it probably looks that way all the time. Right? Maybe especially the chocolate. I'm working my way through the one currently, and then that's sitting right there in a special place to use in a special situation. So respect the survival response and be sort of curious about it. Gee, why did I run from that? Why did I not accept that job? Why did I not decide to do that thing at church? Who am I? What am I about? So you respect it, you be curious about it, and self-compassion, meaning self-forgiveness, which is one of the hardest skills to develop, is an interesting way to find ways maybe to forgive yourself because you're not going into detail. Just saying, what state am I in? Gee, I was in a polyvagal state all day at Susie's wedding. I'm not sure why, but I'm gonna look at that and try to figure out what drove me that way and kind of overcome that. So the regulate or co-regulate. So the co-regulate in the adult mode has a lot to do with like friends and family. So do I have a trusted friend who I can talk about why I was feeling so bad at Susie's wedding? Because I don't want to be that way at the next wedding, or I don't want to be that way at all, or something like that. So you shift back to co-regulation periodically or frequently with our environment, so we can more readily get into the ventral vagal states of connection. And the other thing is to notice the story. So is there a story to why I think I wasn't happy at Susie's wedding, like she was marrying my ex-husband? That could be a story, an easy one. Or maybe there's some other things that's more subtle and more challenging. So the story and restoring is one of the concepts in Deb Dana's book on the exercises. So as you sort of play with controlling vagus nerve, autonomic nervous system, polyvagal states, can you be in a different state more often and then make a new story just about the state? So I could be more connective and feel safer more often now. Period. Not because I went to Susie's wedding or didn't go to Susie's wedding. Just you're talking about the state a few times, and then you start to get that as a habit, and then the story can change. The other stories can change. So after a while, you might want to track the movement from state to state. Like today, I was at a drive-through fast food place window, and suddenly it was taking a long time to get the food, whatever the food was. I said, this is a chance to go ventral vagal. So I looked up and saw the clouds, and the clouds were beautiful, the trees were beautiful. I said, wow, that's a great opportunity. And the clouds, wow, I used to look at clouds when I was a kid with my brother. We'd look at the clouds and make stories of the clouds. And then suddenly, I was sort of singing to myself a song with a phrase about kids in it. And the Ready Robin goes bob, bob, bobbing along. So that was kind of very interesting. I said, it's a new story. So drive-through windows or the Red Robin story. And that's better than being annoyed or what have you. Although my father was really skilled at that. I remember we were at the Toot in New Lebanon one time, and the order wasn't forthcoming, and the person came out and said, I'm so sorry, somehow we got your order delayed, and did you give your order yet? And my dad said, no, we're just here for the lights. But that's a good story, but not No, it was just one of his things where he could be impatient, and then we could tell stories about it later. Just here for the lights. So track the movement from state to state. So I flinched a little bit, had a glimmer of dorsal that said, this is cool. You get an opportunity to go to clouds and go to Red Ramen. Notice large shifts. If you get a big shift, you wonder, gee, I was feeling good, and slowly I'm just feeling empty and lost. Well, that could be you're thirsty because people need water or food, honor the hunger, or some other thing. Reflect and then repeat. It's like rinse and then repeat with your telederm. Shaping it, learn to establish new patterns, change from habitual survival responses to patterns of connection. So that's like using toning the vagal things. Suki Baxter videos, toning the vagal. She's got five videos. There's one with 4,200,000 hits, and that one has something. She calls it anxiety, but something to do with something you just do in your ear for 30 seconds this way, then go up a zone in 30 seconds, and then do the left ear, and then there's something behind the ear, and then you're like a new person. Well, I was impatient. I didn't finish that one yet. But you get surprised and you say, I'm in this better state of being for this period of time, so I guess I wasn't really that way because of that. I was that way just because I needed, my vagus nerve was out of tune or something, and I could retone it. So the re-story and a resilience is like being able to float across the states from, to go from ventral vagal to say, so I know I was feeling pretty good in church, and then I thought, I don't deserve to feel this good. So I hit the guilt thing, and I said, wait a minute, Jesus doesn't want me to be guilty in church, or does he? Maybe he does, actually. I deserve some guilt. So I stayed dorsal vagal. And then when the organ starts for the next song, I'd say, oh, I love that organ. And then ventral vagal. I did the videos with Porges and Dana. People would ask them, what's the fast way? How do you get out of dorsal vagal fast? And they both said, hesitantly and reluctantly, faith. The people of faith can go poof, and they can be there, but both of them are not people of particular religions, so they actually, Porges said something against it in one of his, maybe implying people get stuck somehow over in idolatry. I think idolatry is the concept of we worship something that's not the Lord. It's a misaligned thing, and can drive some dorsal vagal things. So anyway, resilience is the ability to balance the states. Ventral vagal, return to ventral vagal after sympathetic mobilization. So when the fight or flight thing kicks up, think about connecting and toning the vagus nerve. Return to ventral vagal after dorsal vagal shutdown. So that's kind of tricky on somebody. So we have things like death or infidelity. So somebody has an infidelity and they know they deserve to feel horrible for X period of time until whatever happens, except they could understand they could go ventral vagal and feel forgiven faster. And is that okay? It's tricky. But we can do that with some skills, use new resilient pathways in addition to usual. So a way to do that, connecting awareness, safe connection, the social engagement system, autonomic nervous system talks about connection. So what can we do to shift? Breathing. So breathing, you notice if you're hyper and you're shutting down because you're angry at the person at the drive-thru window because they're not getting your order, what kind of breathing would you be in? So that might be like, and your shoulders move. So that's kind of sympathetic overdrive kind of breathing. You can just shift the breathing into sort of diaphragmatic breathing. Let the belly come out with the in-breath. And so prolonged breathing out, though, is what gets more ventral vagal, lowers blood pressure, lowers pulse rate, as opposed to breathing in. So breathing in triggers more sympathetic, breathing out triggers more parasympathetic. And so just doing the didgeridoo where you breathe out a lot. Increases lung capacity, all kinds of things, stop snoring. So counting the breath, though, if you just sit and count your breath, it actually leans toward ventral vagal. So you start to breathe slower, your blood pressure goes down, your pulse rate goes down. Sighing is a vagus nerve reset, and it's a positive thing. Because you can be starting to tense up with a sympathetic mobilization and say, I think I will sigh, or I'll go like this and force myself to sigh, or some other kind of vagus thing. So sighing is a positive thing in the polyvagal literature. And you can practice sighing. Say, There you go. So the sigh, so whenever there's some tension in the, like how things are with close personal relationships like spouses or significant others, basically you start to play the tapes again, and he plays his tape and she plays her tape, and they both know what the next other person's going to say next, but they keep playing the tape. So there could be somebody who says, what about a sigh break? And they sigh, and they reset the vagus nerve and say, gee, that was interesting. So the heart rate variability increased with sigh, increased with long exhalation. So there's the something that changes breathing, 4-7-8 breathing that Andy Weil has on a video on YouTube. It's called 4-7-8 breathing. Essentially is an equal breath thing. So if people are sympathetic overdrive and breathing too fast, they can sort of at least use 4-7-8 to get equal, and drops the blood pressure, drops cortisol, drops cholesterol, drops anxiety, increases sleep if they do 4 sets of 4-7-8 twice a day. 4-7-8 is just like empty your lungs first, breathe in for a count of 4 through the nose, hold for a count of 7, breathe out for a count of 8 with the tongue on the roof of the mouth. Not as good as the didgeridoo, but it's a way to reset. It's a mild vagus reset. Sound. So we have sound, let's see, like a neat sound that also is playful. So play is good for going ventral vagal. So if we have like the didgeridoo, the kazoo. But if you have, so we have people in the audience who have kazoos. So let's see, on the count of 3, we'll have you all play a song like your high school fight song, or the Buckeye, or a hymn. 1, 2, 3, go. There we go. So I think I heard this song. Anyway, so something simple like a kazoo. So a kazoo can take you out of dorsal vagal pretty quickly. If you can't think of a prayer or a hymn or something like that, you say, okay, let's go with the kazoo. Let's do the old high school fight song, or the Buckeye fight song, or Onward Christian Soldiers, or something, and that sort of is a vagal reset button. And your voice, you'll notice that your voice, or when you're talking to that other person who's unreasonable more often than you are, you notice their voice gets a certain way when they're a certain level, when they're maxing out on their insensitivity. But yours might be doing that also. And so the voice can be a certain way when it's ventral vagal, loving, connecting, wholehearted, and another way when it's dorsal vagal, miserable, depressed, shut down, distorted, etc. So music, though, is a wonderful thing. Nature, some people like to just go walk, and it turns out that green things and blue things are good for your health, better than some other colors, but not everybody. So nature is a reset button, a vagus nerve thing. Art, you go to an art museum, you find the room that makes you feel like you've already went to hell, and you say, how do they think of these? And you decide how long are you going to have your soul sucked out before you run to the room with that's got your ventrovagal stuff. Have you been to art museums where you had those kind of things? Obviously TV shows, you're going along and then suddenly people are all getting shot in the head and whatever else. Maybe mutilated a little bit just for fun. So the things that can bring a lot back together is gratitude and awe. So awe, let's see, so Deborah Dana has an awe thing. Maybe it's where this piece of paper is. Awe is defined by two features, vastness and accommodation, a reorganization of your ways of thinking to adjust to the new experience. Like we were looking at the Jupiter, and Rebecca says, wow, that's Jupiter. I think that's the Big Dipper. No, it's not the Big Dipper. Or is it the Big Dipper? There's some clouds there. So it was awesome though, when you look at things like that, and you say, wow, and it resets your hard drive a little bit, like Control-Alt-Delete. I think I am another person as a result of realizing the awesomeness of God, of nature, of Jupiter, whatever somebody's thinking, whatever they're set at. That's the awe piece. Then there's a thing about integration. We got the Suki Baxter, already talked about that. Okay, so integration. So here's what somebody wrote in an awe statement. I was visiting the medieval city of Bruges in Belgium a few years ago and I found a church. I was drawn into the church by its commanding Gothic architecture and the stillness I knew I would find within. As I entered the church, I went from being curious to something more, something palpable I could not explain. I walked along the nave toward the altar and came upon a series of paintings depicting the Passion of the Christ. As I walked from painting to painting, I could feel the pain and sadness of all humanity. And yet, I could also feel a deep and abiding love. Tears streamed down my face as a force larger than myself flowed through me. I was everything at once, grief and joy, love and pain, anger and peace. When I left the silence of the sanctuary and climbed the stone stairs into the sunshine of medieval town square, it was as if I was entering an entirely new world. So that's like resilience. You have it all. You know that your grandma died and your dog did and the president is who he is, or whatever kind of things that might not seem right or fair or what have you, but you still have a wholeness, an anchor, something that connects to awesomeness. And that's part of the fun of the polyvagal stuff, is kind of reviewing some of those simple concepts that we're all familiar with, and we all have all these skills, and then retuning them a little bit with a didgeridoo or a touch football game or something. So we got Suki Baxter has the YouTube videos that I mentioned. CaringMedical.com has a huge list of how you can repair your vagus nerves. There's probably about 40 things on there, starting with a picture of his dog, and says, throw me a bone for some ventrovagal moments, which is a pretty good kind of statement. HeartMath.com has heart rate variability monitors that you can get suitable for training. This one, I charged it all night, but I must have to buy a new one. Anyway, so you can put that up to your ear, and it'll tell you how your heart rate variability is, and whether your autonomic nervous system is balanced. So other things that help: hugging, humming, gargling, tone the vagus nerve, and that's the polyvagal theory and so forth. Any questions on all that stuff? Yes.
So I have been seeing the doctors up in Greenville earlier this year, and they, for the vagus nerve, they wanted me to use, well, they said the regular TENS unit, and they sell it to their patients. But I had called the company, the TENS company, and they're like, no, you don't use the regular TENS unit, that's dangerous. You have to use the one with the microcurrent. So I guess you hook the clip up to the tragus in your ear, and it goes directly
Question about
to,
TENS units.
there's a protocol, and
Yeah.
stimulates. So I haven't I had to return the other one because they said it wasn't safe.
Yeah.
So I have not purchased the other one, but that is, I guess, one more direct way
Right.
to stimulate it and.
So I have that, so on StephenPorges.com, that wrote the polyvagal book, StephenPorges.com, he has 4 different companies that he and his son own that sell devices like that. And then I like the things at HeartMath.com, which talks about global coherence. And they don't talk about the polyvagal theory at all, but Porges did. And any other questions? Yes.
Which nerves does it affect? You said 3 other nerves?
Yeah, 5, 7, 9, 10 is the vagus nerve, and 11. And that's they didn't do a good job of writing the labels on that picture there, but it's just a kind of a message that our brain and our heart are attached to our face, and it's kind of cool, but also scary. So if children look at your face and run,
We've got some work to do.
is that a Vegas thing? Other questions?
How much does this like affect anxiety disorders and stuff, like your vagus nerve?
A whole lot. So we saw after like COVID, we had a lot of supraventricular tachycardias where people would just sit around and their heart would go 120. And so we talked to them about, we blocked them down with drugs with the beta block or something, and talked about toning the vagus nerve and looking at the polyvagal thing, because they could get locked in between sympathetic mobilization and ventral and dorsal vagal. So people don't have their connection to their heart, their whole heart itself. The trauma people, a lot of them were lacking that. So they found that when they helped them to feel safe, they had panic attacks. Because that's how it was when they were beaten or raped the last time or what have you, and they realized, oh, they can't feel that safe, they have to be led to a different point. So we're all a little bit different, and the anxiety, I like the Suki Baxter video on anxiety, because it helps to understand a part of the vagus nerve that relates to the anxiety. Other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Oh, go ahead.
What can you change in your diet to help the vagus nerve as far as, we talk about natural foods or?
Yeah, so if you're inflamed, your vagus nerve isn't doing as well. So like get rid of wheat, and there's some people that have trouble with other things, but wheat inflames everybody, or our current wheat inflames everybody. So you do a simple thing like that. If somebody goes the complete vegetarian one and takes their B12, sometimes they'll feel charged up for a while, and then they'll miss the beat. So there's some balancing. But it's like the polyvagal, trying to get resilient is a balancing thing. I like the getting rid of the wheat. I like keto things. Eat fat, get thin. There's a book over here called Eat Fat, Lose Fat. And Eat Fat, Get Thin is another one that's probably not as good as this one. I don't know. And you had a question?
Well, I just had one. Does that have anything to do with tendonitis, with all the ringing in the ears?
Tinnitus, yes, it can. So toning the vagus nerve can help with tinnitus in a lot of people. And in some people it doesn't. So one of our next things I'm going to give a series of talks about is autoimmune stuff. And we'll end up with some things about low-dose naltrexone as a medical therapy that may come in on the tail end for a lot of folks who have tinnitus and some others of those stuck nervous system things. Other questions? The one last question? Yes.
Is low-dose naltrexone something you would take all the time? It's a drug, right? So, but can you take it all the time?
It depends. You can take it all the time, or part of the time, or off and on or something. But generally it's a build-up kind of a thing, and it hits the toll-like receptors. So we found out with COVID that toll-like receptor number 4, some people were predisposed for that to cause more problems with the COVID. And it's a bunch of receptors on a cell that are not favorable, so it can be blocked with low-dose naltrexone or some other things. So that's part of the next wave in autoimmunity and inflammation and some of those kind of things. Obviously, diet is much more fun and better first. So you get your calcium, magnesium, minerals, throw your weed away, and practice your kazoo playing.
Oh, can you tell everybody what the benefits of the didgeridoo are? I mean, it keeps you from snoring wide.
So didgeridoo, well, because you do circular breathing, the breathing without the didgeridoo up here, it sort of looks like. Which doesn't sound quite the same. But part of that is circular breathing. So that little punctuation was taking a breath in and pumping out the last piece out of my jaw here, which is like a bagpipe. So it tones the muscles here, so you don't have as much flopping in your throat. Increases respiratory, how much you get hold in your lungs. I'm hitting my button here. I have to stop. Okay. So we'll answer any other questions, though. Happy to have you individually up. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.